Hi, this is Daryl Meyer from Keller, Texas. Today is Monday, May 17th, 2010. Hope you guys had a great weekend. Hey, before I get started today, I want to read this passage from Psalm 19, verse 14. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. Let's get right into it today. Out of yahoo.com, headline is Abbas to meet U.S. envoy on May 19th. This is out of the West Bank. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas is to meet U.S. envoy George Mitchell on Wednesday to discuss final status issues in indirect peace talks with Israel, the chief Palestinian negotiator said. Mitchell will then meet with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Thursday, an Israeli official told AFP, on condition of anonymity. Easy for you to say. The discussions between Abbas and Mitchell on Wednesday will concern final status issues with Israel. Head Palestinian negotiator Saeb Erekat told AFP, referring to core disputes in the decades-old conflict such as Jerusalem and Palestinian refugees. Okay, so they're still trying to do this whole two-state solution, which we already know land for peace doesn't work. Look at the Gaza Strip. And, even if they do create a Palestinian state, I can tell you right now, the Palestinians won't be satisfied. They haven't upheld what they've promised to uphold previously. They still incite violence, and it's just going to make things worse. And they will just be that much closer to be able to lob rockets into every part of Israel like they're already planning to do. Okay, this is out of Israel Today. Headline says, Israel two-state solution doesn't address core problem. Israeli Deputy Foreign Minister Danny Ayalon on Sunday said the United States and the international community are going about making peace between Israel and the Arabs all wrong by focusing almost solely on the establishment of a Palestinian state. He said that the current U.S. brokered indirect peace talks seem to have the singular goal of bringing in to being a new Arab state on ancient Jewish lands, which Washington and the world thinks will magically make the conflict disappear. It won't, let me tell you. He says this will not result in lasting peace, and what is needed is reconciliation based on coexistence. It says, but the Palestinians have for nearly 2 decades ignored the outright refused to honor their commitments to end incitement against Israel and the Jews. So, don't know how well that's going to go. Here's a story that just kind of blew me away, also out of IsraelToday.com. Palestinian homes are destroyed in Gaza. Now, when Israel knocks down the homes of Palestinian terrorists or demolishes Arab buildings constructed illegally in Jerusalem, the international community has a field day condemning the actions of the Jewish state. But when Hamas is the one operating the bulldozers, it seems the world has little problem with firm enforcement of the law. How double-sided. The Associated Press reported on Sunday Hamas security forces demolished dozens of illegally built homes in the southern Gaza town of Rafah. Hamas officials said the buildings were constructed without proper permits on government-owned land. Local Palestinians said they were furious that their own government would enforce the law in the same manner as the Israelis. There was no reaction to the newly homeless Palestinians from the United Nations. Okay, I guarantee if this was the Israeli leadership, we'd be up in arms, and oh my gosh, it would be a huge deal. But since Hamas did it, it must be okay. Double standards. I hate them. Okay, out of Israel Nation, IsraelNationalNews.com. Headline is Iran prepared to block Gulf oil and wreck Western economies. Iran's recently concluded war games concentrated on preparations to block the Persian Gulf and wreck Western economies in the event that the United Nations Security Council tries to place harsh sanctions against it. Okay, 40% of the world's oil and gas comes through the Persian Gulf, and Iran has been working on blocking that completely off if there's an issue. We'll see how that goes for them. Another story, this is out of AlJazeera.net. Iran agrees to a nuclear fuel swap. Iran, Turkey, and Brazil have reached a deal on procedures for a nuclear fuel swap aimed at easing concerns over Tehran's nuclear program. This just doesn't sound good. So many people are lining up, so many countries lining up to be ready to go against Israel. Here's a story out of alertnet.org. Israel plays war game assuming that Iran has a nuclear bomb. So they played this war game, and Israel was seen being brought to the heel by U.S. restraints. It says Netanyahu government not present but will be apprised. A nuclear-armed Iran would blunt Israel's military autonomy. A war game involving former Israeli generals and diplomats has concluded, though some players predicted Tehran would also exercise restraint. Yeah, right. Let me tell you, if Iran gets a nuke, they'll use it. And not for defense. They'll go on the offensive, I guarantee you. If we let them get there, it won't be good. It's interesting they're doing war games assuming Iran has nukes. Are they thinking, hey, the United States didn't do anything to stop them, so we better prepare for that? Who knows? Okay, let's talk. I know I've been in Revelation 2 a lot lately. I want to continue that. Revelation 2:19, this was Jesus talking, says, I know your works, love, service, faith, and your patience. And as for your works, the last are more than the first. So we're going to see that the church of Thyatira had some serious problems, and there's an undeniable part of our fallen DNA that wants to tear right into them. I mean, we'd be like, Thyatira, what are you doing? What were you thinking? That's a no-brainer. How did you fall into that one? It's human nature for us to pursue the path of judgment instead of mercy. I mean, we tend to judge instantly. We look at something and make a judgment call. But that's not God's nature, okay? I just want to kind of point out the difference between our fallen human nature and the nature of God. Because without ever compromising His righteous responsibility to identify and deal with sin, the Lord is always merciful to the furthest extent possible. He proves it right here in this letter to the Thyatiran Christians. Instead of tearing right into them, He mercifully builds them up by pointing out what they were doing right. I love this. I don't know about you guys, but me, I can get like a chore list from my wife with 10 things on it. I can do 9 of them, and she'll point out the one thing I didn't do instead of applauding me for the 9 that I accomplished. Any of you guys got wives like that? Some of you maybe are wives like that. I don't know. Just saying. But in my house, that's kind of the way it goes. Anyway, so this church was busy doing a lot of good works. They were extending a lot of love. They were serving. They were being filled with faith. And they were patiently persevering. He was fully aware of all these things. And just to prove that he was current with their condition, he mentions that he knows these things are actually on the rise. So you're probably saying, well, what's the point? Jesus looks at people with merciful eyes. And if there's anything positive happening in their lives, He sees and takes note of it. It's so natural for us to see people's sinfulness and just write them off. That's just kind of the way we are. We can be so focused on what's wrong that we can't see what's right. Jesus shows us that there's more to a person's life than what's wrong. Don't misunderstand. There is a time and a place for confronting sin, as Jesus will demonstrate later, but part of righting those wrongs is recognizing what's already right. Okay, let me go to Psalm 96, verse 13. They will sing before the Lord, for He comes. He comes to judge the earth. He will judge the world in righteousness and His peoples in His truth. Isaiah 33, verse 22. For the Lord is our judge, the Lord is our lawgiver, the Lord is our king. It is He who will save us. How about Matthew 7, verse 1 and 2? Jesus said, do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. So we need to be careful how we judge others, or what kind of judgment we pronounce on others. About John 12, 47 and 48. Again, Jesus talking, as for the person who hears my words but does not keep them, I do not judge him, for I did not come to judge the world, but to save it. There is a judge for the one who rejects me and does not accept my words. That very word which I spoke will condemn him at the last day. How about James 4, verse 12? James 4:12. There is only one lawgiver and judge, the one who is able to save and destroy. But you, who are you to judge your neighbor? That's a beautiful verse. All right, let me finish with James 2, verse 13. And that says, because judgment without mercy will be shown to anyone who has not been merciful, mercy triumphs over judgment. Okay, so what is this teaching us? This is teaching us that we need to be merciful. We need to be forgiving. You know, when somebody asked Jesus, hey, if my brother sins against me, how many times should I forgive him? 7 times? And Jesus said, no, 70 times 7. The point is we need to be merciful. We need to be forgiving. People that do us wrong, curse us, tell us how ignorant we are. Believe me, I get them every day. We need to be merciful. Listen, God bless you. Hope to see you tomorrow.